Approving in Fiscal. Some people have the role of approving purchase orders and reconciliation in Fiscal. These people might or might not act as a buyer as well. This video will give some guidance on how to approve purchase orders and reconciliation in Fiscal. You might be any one of these types of approvers. Purchase Order Approver Level 1 will be the first ones to approve purchase orders after they are saved and submitted for approval by a purchaser. You must check the justification of the purchase order, as well as the chart field's coding, attachments, and other aspects of the purchase order. PO Approver Level 2 also approves purchase orders, just as Level 1 approvers do, but have the additional duty of checking the budget for the purchase. PO Approver Level 3 also check purchase orders, giving the purchase order the final seal of approval. Ad hoc approvers might be added to this chain of approvers at any point as a special one-time approver just for that particular purchase. Reconciliation approvers act at the very end of the Fiscal purchasing chain, confirming that purchasers have reconciled their P-card, also known as CalCard, transactions accurately, the same way they used to sign the bank statement on the front of CalCard packages, verifying that everything is correct. Unfortunately, I do not have all of these roles, so I cannot show all these actions in detail, but this video can get you started. First, I will cover purchase order approval. Purchase order approval happens near the beginning of the purchasing process, right after a purchase order is created, saved, and sent for approval by a buyer. Different units have selected different people to be their purchase order approvers. At CZU, the battalion chiefs and division chiefs, mainly, are Level 1 approvers. Unit Finance, our AO2 and AO, as well as a few of the others, are both approver Level 2 and 3 at CZU. If you are not from CZU, your approvers might be different. Ad hoc approvers can be anyone you want to be sure sees the purchase order before it goes forward, including Fiscal users outside of CAL FIRE. No matter what purchase order approver level you are, this task is approximately the same as signing a Standard 65 or CAL FIRE 3 as the approving officer. Other similarities include taking on the responsibility that the purchase order is correct, along with the buyer who also has that responsibility. It is also a time-sensitive process because the buyer cannot make the purchase until the purchase order is approved. It is also a relatively easy process and shouldn't take more than a few minutes, depending on the number of line items to check. But don't let that trick you into thinking that it isn't an important step. As the purchase order approver, you need to make sure the purchase order is coded correctly, with the necessary attachments and comments included, and evaluate if it is a justified purchase for state funds. When a buyer in your unit submits a purchase order, you'll get notified by email. That means any buyer. For example, if you're a BC for Battalion 4, you'll still get notifications from every buyer in the unit, whether they are in Battalion 4 or not. If you are an approver Level 1, you will decide if you should be approving their purchase order or not. You might choose not to, if, for example, it's a purchase of equipment for a station that is not in your battalion. If you do decide the purchase and/or purchaser is in your jurisdiction, you should proceed with the approval process. If you are approver Level 2 or 3, you are most likely responsible for the whole unit and should just move on to Step 3. Check over the purchase order in Fiscal. If it looks good, approve it. Level 2 and 3 approvers have the ability to push back a purchase order if it's good except for a mistake or two for corrections, but Level 1s have only the option to deny the purchase order if there is a problem. I am a Level 2 approver, so this demonstration won't look exactly like you'll see for Levels 1 and 3, but it should be close. First, how to access purchase orders that need approval. You should have gotten a system-generated email from Fiscal, and you can click the link in it if you want. But you get a lot of emails from Fiscal, and some aren't relevant, and maybe you've misplaced or deleted the emails you need, or maybe you just want to check in Fiscal what you need to do. There are a few ways in Fiscal that you can go and look up purchase orders that are pending approval. Number one is the flag at the top right of your screen. It keeps a list of items that may need your attention. You can click on the links here to access any of these notices that tell you a purchase order is waiting for approval. But it's possible that somebody else has already addressed these, so you'll just have to check. Another way to look for purchase orders that may need your approval is by going to your work list. Here, you'll see a list of items that you might need to address. You can also click on the link to go to the purchase order in question. Another way is to search for purchase orders. On the Add Update POs page, click on the Find an Existing Value tab. Here you can enter the buyer in question under buyer name, for example, if I enter my name and click search, if this field is empty, put 3540 in it. And I'll see every purchase order that I've made. If I want to see just the ones that are pending approval using this PO status dropdown, I can select pending approval or approved, search, and I see the two that are waiting to be approved. So you can look up any buyer's pending approval purchase orders, or if you have a purchase order ID, you can enter it right here in this field and look up the purchase order in particular. By whatever method you use, once you get to a purchase order that needs approval, here is what you'll do. If you've arrived by the link, it drops you on this purchase order approval page. And it may be very tempting just to scroll down and click approve and say, yeah, that's fine. But your responsibility as an approver is to look the purchase order over first. So you'll click on Edit PO. Although the button says Edit, you won't be changing anything, although you could if you found something wrong. A better learning experience for the buyer in that case would be to tell them about it and have them go and change it, so you're not changing it for them every single time for as long as they're making purchase orders. So open the purchase order and look it over. Even if you don't make purchase orders yourself, it's important to know how they should be done. Check out the other videos about creating purchase orders to learn your way around. You'll check pretty much everything just to make sure it's right. You'll check that it's the right supplier, the right buyer, acquisition type, acquisition method, DGS billing code needs to be the one for CZU for the camp or the forest, NPO defaults. You can check that the ship to has been changed. You can check the coding. Go through the entire thing. Look at the view, edit, comments, and attachments. Make sure the purchaser has put a justification on here. The general provisions are present. If it's a good purchase, you'll want the general provisions. If it's a service, you'll need the CAL FIRE 93 and the CAL FIRE 20. And if there's any other supporting documents required, such as prior approval, bids, any other kind of waivers, they all need to be here. And you need to check and make sure that they are. If the buyer happens to be purchasing something from a contract, make sure the contract is linked here in the LPA contract ID, such as for fuel, for propane, for tires, for any other contract that we use. Finally, you'll get down to the bottom and you'll check the line items. This one I chose at random happens to be a credit, but whatever it is, you want to make sure that there's a description, purchase order quantity, a good category, the price. You'll go here into the schedule icon, check the sales tax has been applied correctly, go in and check the coding to make sure that they have coded it where it should be going to the correct PCA. Make sure reporting structure is there and it says our unit. Once you've checked everything on the purchase order, if everything looks good, you can return to purchase order approval using this link and click Approve. But I am approver level 2, so I have one more step. Here on this purchase order, I will click this budget check icon. This is a step only approver level 2s do. Please do not touch this button if you are not approver level 2. By CAL FIRE policy, only level 2 approvers do budget checks. If you are approver level 3, this will have already been done by the time you see the purchase order. After I click this, Fiscal would think for a little while, and if the budget comes back valid, it will say valid right here, and all is well. If it doesn't come back valid, then I must deny this purchase order because there is not money in the budget to pay for it. So if everything is great, I click that Return to Purchase Order Approval page. I can scroll down here and click Approve. If there is a problem with the purchase order and you do not think it should move forward, deny it. Include a comment here in this box before you click Deny so the buyer knows what to fix. Approver level 2 and 3 will also see the pushback button, which allows them to send it back to the previous level of approver for revisions. So if I pushed it back now, Mike Harris, who approved at level 1, would then get a notification that it's been rejected, but it wouldn't go back to the buyer. To send it back to the buyer, you'd click Deny. In this box here, you can see who has approved the purchase order at previous levels if you're level 2 or 3. In this case, I can see that it was Mike Harris. Robert Gutierrez made the purchase order. He's also an approver level 1, so it skipped him. He's not allowed to approve his own purchase order. If I want someone else to look at this purchase order, even if I think it's okay, I can click this plus button to add an ad hoc approver. I look up who I want to include and click Insert, and then after me, it will go to that person. And that's all there is to it for approving purchase orders. On to the other type of approver in Fiscal. Some people have the power to approve reconciled Fiscal purchases. This happens at the very end of the purchasing process and is the last step we do at the unit level. The title of this role is actually P-card approver, which can be a little confusing because what they do is approve reconciliation. But reconciliation can only happen when there are P-cards or CAL cards involved. Just like with purchase orders, when the buyer has done their part, you'll get notified. Unfortunately, I do not have the P-card reconciler role, so I can't show you what the emails might look like. In Fiscal, you'll navigate to the Reconcile Statement page, check the buyer's work, and if it's good, approve it. So let's take a look at it. Navigate to the Reconcile Statement page. Using the menus, you would go to Main Menu, Purchasing, Procurement Cards, Reconcile, Reconcile Statement, and you'll get this Reconcile Statement search page. Under this drop-down, you will select the P-card approver role. I don't have that role, so I'll select this reconciler role that will allow me to look at other people's statements. I won't be able to approve it, but the interface will look the same. The P-card approvers will just have one extra option that I'll tell you about. So pick the buyer you want to look at. Today I'm going to pick on James Sutter again. You can enter their name in all caps, last name first, or you can use the magnifying glass to look them up. And click Search. you'll get this page, which looks almost identical to the page you see when you're reconciling transactions, which is what you're looking at here. Everything is pretty much the same, except if you're an approver, under these drop-downs, instead of just staged and verified, you'll have a third option, which is approved. You can click on View All to see all of the transactions. You can see that James Sutter here has 28 lines total. I'm only seeing 1 to 9 of them. So if I click View All, Fiscal will show me all 28. And I'll just have to scroll down to see them all. I can also click on this Show All Columns button, which will spread this viewing box all the way from left to right in my window. But it's still so long that I need to use this horizontal scroll bar to see all the way to the end. Now in my case here, since I'm looking at it as a reconciler, I'm seeing everything, whether it's reconciled or not. But P-card approvers will only see lines that have been switched to verified. Additionally, when you click on verified, as I said, you'll have the option to say approved. But before you approve it, you need to check on it. Under comments and attachments, you'll need to see if there are the proper attachments linked to this transaction. In this case, I don't see any attachments here, but down on this transaction, I can see from the little lines inside the bubble that there are comments, although this one is blank, but there's a 65 attached here as an attachment. So there should be a comment here. If I go look at the next one, 2 of 3, there's the purchase order attached. And then there's a receipt. Ideally, there would be a comment here saying what's attached. So you'll check that. Make sure they've uploaded their dispatched purchase order, an itemized invoice, and a paid receipt. If it's a service, there needs to be a CAL FIRE 93 also. If there are any other required supporting documents, those must be there too, just like in a CalCard package. You'll also want to check the coding. Again, that's this little square with the arrows coming off of it. You can't change the coding at this point, but if you see something wrong with it, it will have to go and get fixed, and you won't want to approve it. Going to the left, or I'm sorry, to the right, check that this acquisition method has been filled in. It says non-IT goods, fair and reasonable. Here under this link, View Edit Purchase Details, you'll want to click on that. Take a look and make sure that a purchase order has been linked, that there's a category ID, ship to, supplier ID, that these are all filled in. Moving further to the right is the description column. And there needs to be a description in this field that matches the line item that this purchase order line item is linked to. Each one of these transactions links to a line item in the purchase order, and the description needs to be put into this field. If all of that is good, you'll check one more thing. You need to look and see if you have valid here in these columns. I think for the approvers, you'll only see 2 valids, but I see 3 because I'm in the reconciler screen. If all of that is good, you'll want to switch from verified to approved. And when you're done, go to the bottom and click Save. Doing that sends this transaction to DAO, and from there, they will go to SCO, who will pay the credit card company. And that's it for how to approve things in Fiscal.